Go. All right. Hello and welcome. Good morning, everyone. This is Ike Worth with Sports Management Worldwide out here in Portland, Oregon. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We got a very international and diverse group here with us today, which is great. We are going to keep everyone muted so that any background noise doesn't come through or anything like that. Pretty standard practice for our Doc Talks. We also always encourage you guys to go down into the chat function down below. Feel free to network, share where you're from, what you do for a living, and what your dream job is. We will be having Mick Hogan here join us in just a minute or two. I think he's wrapping up something else, and so we'll get started here. And we have John Print and, of course, Dr. Lynn Lashbrook here to facilitate today's Doc Talk. So, Dr. Lashbrook, I see you're in. John Print, I see you're in too. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to you guys. Like I said, Mick will be joining us here shortly, and we look forward to having you all in.
Thanks, Ike. And I want to thank our staff, Alyssa, and Megan and Sharice and Ike. They do a great job of putting these Doc Talks on, and we're going to keep doing Doc Talks. Doc Talks are designed to help you answer all your questions, see if there's any interest, we can help you work in sports. We always say every week, I do a weekly chat, adrenalize today and monetize tomorrow. And those that are interested in rugby's growing globally. I can't wait to interview Mick when he comes in. But to be honest, and Mick is in, but it's going to be fun. And give us an hour. And as Ike told you, I've been a teacher for 50 years, write notes in class, only class on earth in the world that encourage you to pass notes to each other. These are colleagues. These are some people you'll meet for a lifetime in the world of rugby. You all have one common interest, and that's the business of rugby, and that's what we look forward to. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Mick, can you hear me across the pond?
I can, yes. How are you? Everybody well?
I'm good. Is your video on? Let's see if we got you now.
It
there
is,
you
yes.
Go. Hey,
I'm
good
there.
to see you. I'm around water in Seattle, but I'm really looking forward to this Doc Talk, Mick, and every Doc Talk, and we've been doing this since COVID for the last year, and it's gone very well. But Mick, a lot of people in the room are new to SMWW. I'm going to start out as I do at every panel we used to meet. Your story from high school on. Walk us through your career. You left high school and kind of tell us your path, because it's an inspiration to anyone that wants to work in rugby.
Yeah, thanks for that. I went all the way through to university. Well, this is how old I am, Lynn, is Polytechnic in England. So there were two tiers of university, and I was the last year of Polytechnic. So wow. People will now be able to look up on Google and work out sort of how old I am. So yeah. I left Polytechnic at 21, and a theme that I've said throughout, I think we've done 11 now, and I know John's on the call, he'll be able to.
Yeah, he is. I lost you, Mick. I lost your mute button.
There we go. I don't know what happened there. I didn't press it.
You'd think in tech skill you'd learn the mute button, but I don't think they have a mute button. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said one of the things I've done is I always tell people you've got to volunteer if you can. If you see a good opportunity to volunteer, because it's such a great way to get experience. And what I did, I volunteered every Saturday morning while I was a student to go and coach rugby league, which is, in the northeast of England, they don't even understand the main rugby, which is rugby union. Never mind rugby league. It was like completely alien. But I'd get in at about 4 a.m. in the morning after going out to some godforsaken hellhole of a drinking club or wherever, and I'd get up at about 8 a.m. because one of the dads of the kids lived near where my student house was. And he'd pick me up and he'd drive me about 5 miles across town, and I'd run a coaching session for this ragtag bunch of Geordie kids who had no idea about rugby. But I did it for about 18 months and I absolutely loved it. And we had, it's not a sport that is synonymous with the Northeast. So we'd go off and we'd play other teams and usually get beat. But these kids, some of them have actually gone on out to run clubs. Some of them turned out to be professional players. May have nothing to do with my coaching because I was hopeless. But what it did, a job came up a couple of months after I graduated. So, I graduated in 1992, which was, in the UK, it was a recession. It was the worst recession in a generation. So there were no jobs, unemployment hit a high, everybody was struggling. And because I'm a volunteer and I had a bit of background, I got a job as a development officer, a community coach up in the northeast of England doing rugby league. So I did that for around about 6.5 years, and I absolutely loved the job. And what it taught me more than anything was how you talk to people, how you bring people on your journey, because ultimately the people I was dealing with as a development officer were all volunteers. Yeah. So none of them were working for me. None of them had to do it because they were getting paid for it. And my attitude always was, look, if I'm going to ask you to work till 8:30 at night as a volunteer to either coach these kids or run this session or whatever it is, then I'll work till 9. And if I'm going to ask you to be up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, I'll be there at 6:45 to see off the bus. Yeah. And I think, what you've got to do, you've got to bring people with you whatever you do, don't you? So
absolutely.
I did that. And then I went into other roles in professional clubs. So I got a marketing job in a professional club, and then flitted between the gods of I did marketing, went and worked for a governing body, came back, became a head of commercial at a club. So I've really learned on the job. And then in time now, I've been CEO of 3 professional clubs, worked on a couple of World Cups, done some bidding stuff for major European finals and the like. And so, yeah, it's been a journey in rugby, both codes for the last 30 years, but it's one I've really, really enjoyed.
What's interesting, whether it's my story in America and getting in American football while I was playing college football, it's the walk-on. I used to water the cinder track back in 1966, right. And that's a true story, but it really is the DNA of what we are, and that's why our informational interviews are so important. We'll talk about your class in a minute, but I want to come back over here to America and the globalization of sports. John Print, who will join us in a minute to ask you some questions. John took me to Twickenham, and the first thing I noticed was you got the headset so you could listen to the referees. It's a fascinating game. And I said, why can't they do that in soccer? He said, well, rugby's a gentleman's sport in a sense, and it really is. But we're at Twickenham, and I'll never forget the post game. I went to the Super Bowl 2 weeks ago, but nothing was more fun than Twickenham afterwards, and Neil Diamond, if I may. But I tell you, it's a unique sport. But let's talk about America. There's 12 teams in North America. We're go global or go home. And I really believe this, just like soccer in 2026 coming to America, I think it's going to surpass all sports in America. It already is a worldwide sport. But I feel the same thing about rugby moving and penetrating North America. Let's talk about that for a moment, because I think there's job opportunities all over the world, not just where it was born and where it's most popular. So let's talk about, for a minute, North America and the expansion and the business of rugby.
Yeah, well, what you've got in North America is you've got Major League Rugby now, and it truly is a countrywide sport. So you've got from Seattle, where you are, all the way over to the other coast and New York. So and all points in between. And what I see real parallels with what happened with Major League Soccer back in 1996. So you saw where Major League Soccer was in 96. The sport had a couple of false dawns through the 70s. But you know what? After the World Cup in 94, they said, right, we've got a real opportunity now. They stuck at it. They've had a few road bumps along the way. But I think Major League Soccer is the success story of sporting growth anywhere in the world. Anywhere. Because look at where they were. I think they started off with 10 teams. A couple fell off by the wayside after a year or two. I remember watching one of the early New York teams playing the old Meadowlands Stadium on an artificial pitch, and they hadn't quite managed to get all the gridiron off. And as you know, gridirons are quite narrow fields, so there's a narrow football field, and there must have been a few thousand in this stadium that held 75,000. And look at it now. You've got Atlanta putting 50, 60, 70,000 in. Importantly, you've got a load of purpose-built soccer stadium in that sort of 20 to 35,000 capacity, which is absolutely ideal. So, look, coming back to rugby, the MLR will go the same way. It will continue to grow. It's a model that I absolutely love. There's no relegation. Relegation is absolutely, you wouldn't hear of it in American sport, would you?
Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm really against it as well. I think it's based on football in England, and every sport in England almost has to copy football.
I don't think we're going to fix that one though. But
yeah, I don't. I'm looking at John now, and John looked up when I said relegation. Because for those that don't know, John's team is Gloucester Rugby, and at the minute, Gloucester unfortunately are rock bottom of the Premiership, and we've actually got away with relegation for 1 year because of COVID. And had that not happened, it's fair to say as we approach the halfway stage, John, Gloucester are looking favourites for relegation. Would you agree?
Well, there's no relegation now, so it doesn't matter to me. I've changed my tune about that whole relegation debate.
Yeah. So real quickly before I hand the mic to John, you'll appreciate this. Growing up in Kansas City, the late Lamar Hunt, who founded the American Football League because the NFL wouldn't expand. He and Phil Anschutz, another Kansas person. I watched the first ever MLS game, the Kansas City Wiz, and 10,000 people in a 70,000 seat stadium. And even me, who grew up thinking soccer was a communist plot, I'm not only a season ticket holder, I'm proud to say my son owns the Las Vegas Lights, but I'm glad you use that analogy for rugby because I hadn't thought of it that way. You're absolutely right. Every sport can grow in another country. I think it's ridiculous. I call it silopia, where the curators of the game just think, well, this is the way it is, tradition. I mean, hockey has taken over the South. The number one draft pick a couple of years ago was from the South. Who would have ever thought hockey in the South? So it's a very exciting time. And before I pass the mic to John, every sport has been impacted by COVID. Describe the impact of COVID on rugby, and then I'll pass the mic to John for further questions, and I'll stay in and enjoy.
Yeah, it's been huge. You know, we're playing behind closed doors. So my team, Newcastle Falcons, is now coming up to the halfway point of the league. We've not had a single fan in now. And the impact was double on my team. Because of relegation, last season, we were in the division below the championship. And then halfway through, or 2/3 of the way through, COVID hit, season finishes, and we get promoted because we were top of the league and we won it by a mile. But we couldn't start until they finished off the last Premiership season. So we've just had a close season of 8.5 months. We couldn't play, couldn't operate. And then when we started back in November, we started back behind closed doors. So we're very, very lucky that we've got a very generous owner who's got a couple of quid. The government, to be fair to them, have been very good in helping out sport through furlough schemes and grants and loans and the like. And we will muddle through. And to be fair, that probably the wages have come down a bit, which they needed to do. But we've got challenging times ahead. But we're now looking. We look at American sports all the time. So we're now looking at how do we centralize a lot of what we do. We're moving towards one ticketing system. We're going to become the first sport in Europe, we believe, that has one ticketing system, which, you said to anybody over here and they scratch their heads, whereas, baseball's had a variation of that for decades, hasn't it? And it's that collectivization. Right.
The cross-pollination, football players maybe turn into rugby or vice versa. I'm fascinated by the globalization. And Mick, it's so good. I just know I got my 2 shots. The vaccine is coming. And even you have to be old like me in order to get it. But to be honest with you, I think by spring or summer, we're going to be back to some normalcy in sports, and it's very exciting. John, I'm going to hand the mic to you and listen in, and I know you'll talk about whatever issues as well as what you can learn from Mick in the course. Mick, you've been a trooper as a faculty. We're lucky to have you, and I can't wait to get back on the road and have a couple beers with you, okay? John, take over.
Cheers, Doc.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And hi, Mick. Nice to see you again. So for the guys in the room, every week during the 8-week course, we always start off with an update on the business of rugby. And I think we have done 11 courses, Mick. So things have changed quite a lot, haven't they, in the world and especially in rugby. Let's start off with talking about that issue that you brought up about the relegation and scrapping it in the Premiership. What is your views on that? In terms of, some sports don't do it like the American sports, but the very kind of, it's a British way to have promotion and relegation. So it's quite a change in the landscape, isn't it?
It is. And look, I said before, John, it comes from football. And when you look at football, particularly the Premier League, you've got a division below that in the Championship that has 10, even 15 clubs that could very easily step up. You know, they've got the stadia size, they've got the support base, they've got a commercial program. And when they get into that top league, they get the cash as well. They get over £100 million. So it's quite an easy transition. And you can see why football has promotion and relegation. Actually, you start to drop down the leagues, the top end of one league, and by top end, I don't just mean the top team, I mean perhaps the top third of that league, is probably the equal of the bottom third of the league above. So it's important, I think, for that sport to have promotion and relegation. But you've got to look at it on a per sport basis. Look at rugby. We've effectively got 13 and a half big clubs. So we've got the 12 that are in the Premiership, and we've always got one that sits outside. And for the last 8 years, that team that's got relegated has come straight back up and has come back up pretty easily. So it's almost like, if you look at it, it's like a really bad game of musical chairs. Somebody goes and sits out, loses even more money, and then comes back in. Yeah. That half a team is Ealing. You know, Ealing, and look, they're a great club. They've got a very, very rich benefactor, but they're playing in a stadium that won't meet the criteria, and they've got crowds in the hundreds rather than the thousands. So they've got to do a lot more work. So I think for rugby, promotion and relegation is not, certainly relegation isn't right. Promotion and adding players, adding teams as they prove their worth is something we should look at. But look, it's a really emotive subject.
It is. It's massively emotive. Now, Mick, you know, you also are heavily involved in rugby league, aren't you? With the Thunder, Newcastle Thunder, and they do a slightly different process of going up the pyramid, don't they? And you had some good news at the end of last year.
Yeah, so because of a team sort of pulling out in a couple of divisions above, we got the chance to move up a division, but it was by application off the field, and rather than winning it on the field and getting promoted, because there is a small element of promotion relegation there. What was interesting about that, and it probably relates to the course and the sort of the areas that we talk about, is we had to present our case, and we had to present our case on the field, but probably more importantly off the field. So, you know, what facilities did we have? What commercial program did we have? What did our community department look like? You know, how do we communicate with fans? What's the technology we've got? So a lot of the things that we cover over the 8 weeks of the course, we were able to demonstrate why we thought we were the best club to be pushed up a division. And actually, we put it in, and the great thing is there were 5 people on the panel, and we got the unanimous vote. And, you know, it is a theme that we keep coming back to, John, on the course, is that the more successful you are off the field, the better your chance on the field. Doesn't automatically mean that you will be successful, but the more money we can raise off the field by having a great commercial program, selling even more tickets, you know, having merchandise that flies off the shelves, we give the coach and the squad perhaps a bit more money to play with. And the law of averages says that probably the more money you've got, the more successful you're going to be. Doesn't always mean that, and thankfully it doesn't as well, because if it did, we'd just get the 12 owners in a room at the start of the year, ask them all to produce their bank balance sheet, and the one with the biggest one would hand the trophy to. It isn't like that, and probably I'll get shot for saying this if anybody's listening who supports them, but a very near neighbour of yours, your main rivals, actually Bath, probably, have consistently proven over the years, probably one of the biggest spenders in the English Premiership, but have probably not had the success to match that spend. So again, proving, you know, it's not just about going out buying the best players. You've got to have a good academy system producing the spine of that team, and lo and behold, that's one of the weeks that we talk about as well, isn't it, John?
Yes. And you know, that's why I asked the question, really, because a lot of the weeks that, you know, cover that kind of building blocks of a club, amateur or professional, you know, from the revenue streams through rugby operations, and also, you know, the match day experience. So we do cover an awful lot, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Mick, I'd be really interested to get your view on the rugby league experiment, the Toronto Wolfpack, which was, I think it was almost successful, wasn't it, until the pandemic kind of reared its head.
What's
your views on it? Because it was a brave project, wasn't it?
It was really brave. It was really bold. And for those that don't know, effectively they started a club in Toronto, Canada, and entered the British League, because rugby league isn't big in North America. So they were flying teams over to play them, and then they would complete their games in blocks. It was really bold. It started in the third tier, got promoted at the first chance, then took 2 goals to get out of the next level and got into Super League in 2020, which is the top flight in rugby league. They got 6 weeks in, and obviously the pandemic hit. But the problem was then that they didn't get any central income because of the conditions in which they came into the league. Whilst the English clubs could get support from the UK government, they couldn't because they were Canadian registered, and there was a different criteria over in Canada for how you support business and sports clubs. So, it was really unfortunate how it transpired, and they just went too long without. And with the weather being not the warmest in Canada in February and March at the early part of the season, meant that they had to back end a lot of the home games. So, of course, when the pandemic hit, they hadn't played a single home game because they tend to stack them towards the better months over the summer. So they had no income in the bank. They had no sort of cash in the bank to sort of keep themselves going. So they've unfortunately had to withdraw. There's talks about them reforming, but that's going to be difficult. But let's see where they get to. And there's talks about another team coming on from Ottawa in Canada. Again, that's been put on hold because of the pandemic. Really bold move, as you say, because let's be honest, the NFL's looked at this for about 12, 15 years, and they're not ready yet, if they ever will be, because it's a huge commitment. You look at what's needed to move those NFL teams when they play in London. There's 3 games in London every year. It's a big commitment. Could London support a club? Without doubt. You would have 8 games at Wembley, and every single game will be sold out. They would have corporate guests and partners, incredible amounts there. But it's that logistic. However, it is possible, is what I would say. And
Mick, let me add something here, John, because of the NFL, and we've been coming over there for years. I can tell you the new CBA, they're negotiating as we speak to 17 games. They sell out in 20 minutes. I can assure you, we came back from Mexico City last year before COVID. They sold out in 20 minutes. I think the NFL will lead the way of a major franchise landing there. The owners, some of them own stadiums and soccer teams, but I think the NFL, in fairness, is going to set an example for others, just like rugby in America. I just think this globalization that we're talking about, particularly after COVID, there's going to be wind to our backs in what we see. So you're absolutely right and on target looking at other leagues, but I don't think anything's going to stop the NFL from getting to Europe and having more than one franchise in our lifetime.
Yeah, and I think you're right there, but they've done it the right way as well, haven't they, Lynn? Yeah. They've primed the market. I mean, they primed the market back in the 80s in the UK by doing TV deals. So they got me. I'm hooked. I'm a Los Angeles Rams fan, 40 years, but I got hooked in 1982 when it appeared on Channel 4, and I've stuck with the team ever since. I absolutely love the sport. And that's the way to do it, is get people into that way. Then they brought over the NFL Europe, and that went for years. So they put a lot of hard yards in. So if and when it does happen, it will be off the back of an incredible amount of work. But you're right, globalization is happening. It will continue to happen and grow, not just in football, not just in NFL or rugby, but in other sports as well.
John, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great topic. Mick, 17th of May. Fans may be allowed back in stadiums. They're also talking about, full stadiums by the summer, very optimistic, but it does create some interesting debate, especially about the British Lions tour potentially being on home soil. What's your views on that? Because it seems like going to South Africa is going to be impossible.
Look, I'm a rugby fan first and foremost. I'd love nothing more than to see the Lions go to South Africa, play on the original dates with 35,000 red-shirted supporters there, playing in packed stadiums in South Africa and giving the boost to that country that it's waited for. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. They're somewhere behind the UK in terms of the vaccine rollout, and unfortunately, they are a red flag nation at the minute because of the variant that's come from there. One of the options is that they could go out there and play behind closed doors or with very, very small crowds, but it's difficult because both the Lions and South Africa benefit so much from that 35,000 strong Lions army of supporters that travel with the team. So the other options, you move it to 2022. difficult because, we've already missed 2 summers and you'd be impacting the 3rd summer when all the other countries have got tours planned from England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales that make up the Lions. So there's a real chance it will come to the UK. Will that appease the traditionalists? No, it won't. But this is about just getting something away and making sure that both the Lions and South Africa don't suffer what would be pretty crippling losses. Because, for those that aren't sure what the Lions are, it's the best of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and they tour every 4 years. So it's fair to say for the last 4 years, they've been planning this tour to South Africa, running up costs, attracting sponsors, and they get one payday, which is a 6 or 7 week tour every 4 years. If that doesn't happen, if it's cancelled completely, there's a lot of bills left to pay and no money coming in. So, look, it's not ideal, but this is about preserving the Lions and, to a degree, supporting South Africa so that they're able to continue beyond 2021.
Yeah, and that's the thing,
John, as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
The other thing is, at the minute, a lot of the fans that get to go and watch the Lions are pretty affluent. You've got to be affluent to either go to Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa, where they tour every 4 years, go away for 3-4 weeks, pay the airfares, the hotels, all the entertaining. It comes into the thousands, if not the tens of thousands. So there's only a certain level of supporter can go. If you bring that tour to the UK and Ireland, actually you open up the Lions to a completely new generation and section of people that perhaps haven't been able to afford to go in the past or couldn't get the time off work or weren't prepared to travel. Well, it'd be right on the doorstep now. So it offers those people a chance to see the Lions up close and live for the very first time.
Yeah. I actually think it will be amazing if it happened as a one-off. And I think it deserves it. And I think, it's really important for South African rugby, because they haven't had any income since they're world champions. It need the money, don't they? Really? Because they
the world champions, John. Their last game was the World Cup final in 2019, in November 2019. So if they don't play this summer, they will go 2 years minimum without a game, which is too long for any international team to not play. So I think it's important for a number of ways.
Yeah. But it could be, a fantastic summer of sport if things go to plan. Also, the Olympics, the sevens revolution is a fantastic Olympic sport. That's been such a big thing to grow the sport around the world, Mick, hasn't it?
Right. It's been huge, John. So again, sevens, for those not familiar with rugby, sevens is the short form version of it. It's the almost rugby light, but it's the quicker version. Lots of scores, lots of spectacular running and passing and offloading. And it's the way that I believe rugby will develop at a faster pace around the world, because it's a far simpler sport than the full 15 side, and it can hook a lot more people in a lot quicker. So as a development tool, sevens is absolutely superb. And ever since it got in the Olympics, that elevates the sport even further, particularly in a lot of countries where you want funding for sport. If you're not an Olympic sport, you don't get any funding. So it's crucial. In the US, I'm great pals with Ross Young, who's the CEO of USA Rugby. And a big chunk of their funding comes from the fact that both the men's and the women's teams are in the Olympics playing sevens, and they'll be over in Japan later this year. So it's crucial for rugby to really accelerate that development, that growth of the sport around the world.
And Mick, is it analogous? Cricket went to the 2020 and it revolutionized the business of cricket. And I know it's not the same analogy, but it is, it seems, more spectator friendly and more fun to watch, more betting, etc. You know what I mean?
Very, very much so. Again, the 2020 cricket was a far shorter version of it. There were far more big hits. It was a game of cricket can last anything from 1 day to 5 days, as you know.
Hard to get out of the house 5 days.
2020 was crucial because it fitted that sort of 2 to 2.5 hour window that a lot of people now want. Particularly if, I know if I was taking my kids, and they're 14 now, but if I'd have taken them any time up to now, even the shortest form version of the sport before 2020 was a full day. I'm saying to Matthew and he's 12 or 11, come and watch cricket. How long does it last? 9 hours. It just, no chance. but go after work or early evening, watch it. There's lots of sixes, lots of spectacular running and hitting and bowling. Right. You know, a bit of razzmatazz as well, a bit more for the family. Again, I'm going to use the word Americanizing sport, which some traditionally say, but a lot of us love.
Yeah.
And it's that way that you introduce a sport to a far wider audience.
And as I pass the mic back to John is my escort for rugby and cricket. He's taken me to both, so he's my mentor internationally. Go ahead, John.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. Mick, let's just bring it back to home. The Six Nations Championship is underway. What's your views on the tournament so far?
I think it's been fantastic because there's been some really close games. It's been a bit of controversy, and we all like a bit of controversy in sport, don't we? We're a couple of red cards and a couple of spectacular scores. I think the only dark cloud looming is obviously France and being able to play this weekend. So that dreaded C word again, COVID, it's captured 10 of their players and staff. I see Doug on the call from Scotland, who's been on a previous course, and we now face a dilemma, don't we, Doug? Is that apparently if they play this weekend, France will be without up to 10 players. If they knock it back a week because of the regulations and the clearly defined international windows, Scotland could be without anything up to 9 players because those players, it's a club weekend and the clubs get priority over the international game. So, what do you do? And if I'm Scotland, I'm saying, no, we're playing this weekend. We don't have an issue with COVID. You do. That's your problem. You need to call up other players. We should not be weakened because of this. But I do think it is absolutely, it's the best Six Nations potentially in a generation. Doug, would you agree? Nod your head or shake your head. Scotland have started on fire. They beat England. Every game, with the exception. Yeah,
we were wanting it called there when we beat England. We didn't want the competition to go any further. It's been really exciting watching everyone.
Yeah, I did see a few social media tweets that the set of the stop the count. Yeah, when Scotland had won that first game, which was great to see. But it's compelling. It's brilliant. A lot of the games have been great and just makes great theatre, doesn't it, John?
It sure does.
Yeah.
A lot of people who take the course with us, Mick, they're looking to break into rugby in the professional level, but the community level, you've already mentioned it about volunteering, but the community level is something that you can really focus on. Especially in England, the rugby clubs do a lot of work in the community. Yeah. It's a great way to build your CV and also develop a career, because that's how you kind of started, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So, I mentioned it earlier with Lynn. I started off 6.5, 7 years as a community development officer and learned a load of skills that I'd like to think have held me in good stead for the rest of my career. But a lot of the lessons that we do, John, on the course, be that about how you put on events, how you perhaps bring in sponsorship, some of the operational considerations you've got to have when putting on an event as well. Yes, I talk about them from either an international point of view or an elite level club. But if you're involved at a club that says semi-professional or a community level, then you can take those lessons, and those lessons are scalable. So when we're talking about attracting sponsors, it's exactly the same principles if you're involved in a local pub team as you are if you're involved in an international team trying to get sponsorship there. The numbers are different, don't get me wrong, but the principles are exactly the same. And what I'd like to think as well, John, is that a lot of the lessons we use, you could just take out the word rugby, you could put cricket in there, you could put football, you could put hockey. It's about how you run a sports club, be that community, semi-pro, or elite level professional. And that's hopefully what we get over. Obviously, we use rugby because of my background, and there's a lot of very, very real and up-to-date examples.
Yeah. I think we're going to go to some questions in a moment. So if you've got any questions, please raise
John, let me add some what Mick said.
Yeah.
It's all our courses, our 35 courses, but I take a lot of pride in those informational interviews when they call and say SMWW, John Print, Mick Hogan, Dr. Lashbrook. Most people will give an interview. In interviews, they're not an interview for a job, but many times an employer will say, yeah, give me your resume. They're intrigued by the commitment a student has made to learn more about the business. Also, Mick, I've surveyed a lot of owners and people that hire in sports. This post-COVID, they have to hire back, and they're not going back to the same people they furloughed. They want new blood and new ideas. And that's where I think so many people don't realize the opportunity to get connected. And I call it 2020 wonderful, but I think it's a roaring 20s. We have to hire people back. Everybody's furloughed. And I think they want to hire some new blood with new ideas. That's why I think there's momentum and wind at their back when they invest in a course. That's my opinion.
I could not agree more. Right. When I get a CV, if we've got a position, and I've interviewed for dozens, if not hundreds of people over the years in all the clubs and organisations I've worked with, do a look at your education? Possibly. Yeah. Do a look at your previous jobs? Yeah, a bit more. Do a look at how you've gone out and either A, bettered yourself, or B, volunteered to get relevant experience. That's the bit that stands out to me, because on some jobs I've had 150 CVs and resumes. Yeah. When you're flicking through that quickly, it's hard to do. The other bit, and what this course encourages you to do, is to get out, as you say, and interview people within the industry, right? The number of people I have taken on, right, because I've known them from either a previous placement or they've bothered to connect with me and they've got the name, we've started a conversation, far more than just picking off resumes. Yeah. I'll embarrass him again, but you know, Doug came on the course, right? He completed all 8 weeks. He asked some great questions. All the work was done. I feel like I know Doug now, and if anybody came to me and said, I'm thinking of hiring Doug, right, to be full-time in rugby, I would got absolutely no problem. What do you need off me to get him a job? Yeah. And we've always said as well, look, myself and John are open. We know a few people in the industry, in fact, probably more than a few people. But you know what? If you're trying to get to somebody, if we don't know them, I'll guarantee we know either one or two people away from them, so we can introduce to the person that knows that. It's about making connections.
And you know what? We go back to the old cliche, who you know, but now you have to, it's a business and you have to have the what you know. And we do give them the skills and the what you know and what are the trends are, like you and John are talking about today. And I also take a lot of pride, our faculty, including you and John. I have this doctorate degree in kinesiology, which has nothing to do with rugby or other sports. And my point is, all of our faculty, including yourself, are industry leaders. You're in the trenches. You can talk COVID because you're in COVID. And that's what I take. And we're getting a lot more colleges that are taking courses because they realize we're a friend of a university investment. I take a lot of pride in that. But you're magical. Your sincerity, you love the sport, but you also love giving back to the sport. John, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. The next question I want to talk about is your experience with some of the major events you've been involved in. Obviously, the Rugby World Cup and the Rugby League at Newcastle. What's it called? The Super Weekend, is it?
The Magic Weekend,
Magic Weekend. Sorry, yes.
That's the one.
Yes. So putting on those events, takes a lot of organization and a lot of staff and an awful lot of planning as well, doesn't it?
It does, and that's the key there, John. Is the planning time. You've got to give yourself enough time with these events now, and we're talking years, not weeks and months. If we want to be the absolute best and put on the greatest show that we can, it requires years. The other bits that you need to do, it has to be partner led as well.
Yeah.
So we've very much gone down a partner approach in Newcastle. We are. How do you develop a sport? I've said a number of times the Northeast is not synonymous with rugby of either code, yet we've grown both codes quite considerably. People say, do you do it from the grassroots up? Do you do a lot of community work and then over years and generations, those people grow up and you grow your base from the base? Or do you do it from the top down where you put on these huge events that inspire people and bring new people to your sport? Do you do it sort of top down? We don't. We do both. You've got to do it with these big events that support your community work and vice versa, your community work that supports these big events in the city. And we've had some success, and it's, we do it in partnership with the city council and the tourism body and the local venue and marketing people and commercial partners, because when you bring more people to the table, they've all got different skills, different resources they can put to it. And as you mentioned there, John, it requires a lot of people. And You know, at our club, there's not a lot of people. Certainly not a lot of people with spare hours, because if they did, I'd be wanting to know why they've got spare hours. You know, they should be busy. So, you know, we've had some success. We've put on Rugby World Cup in 2015. Then we had the Magic Weekend for 4 years. We've had, you know, we had an England international. We bid for the European Cup final and put the 2 finals on there. And we've got the Rugby League World Cup later this year with 4 games in the city. That's made us very popular in the city as well as a club.
Yeah,
incredibly popular, because guess what? On these weekends, not just hundreds, not just thousands, tens of thousands of people from outside the city are coming in, staying in the hotels, spending in the bars, the restaurants, taking the taxis, visiting local attractions. The economic impact from rugby, just from 2015, we spent a lot of time measuring this, is now close to, if not over, £250 million to the local economy. Now, when you're talking those, and that's not a Mick Hogan back of the fag packet, by the way, because if it was, it would be 77 gazillion trillion billion pounds. That's reports done by independent companies like EY, you know, big companies like that put these numbers of economic impact. We're not even talking about the social impact, and that's a big theme going forward as well, is social impact and that corporate social responsibility that we have to do as a club, or we do as a club, and that businesses are looking forward in partnership. You know, all the legacy programs we've run off the back of that, and the numbers of people that are inspired into volunteering and going on to take up the sport and getting healthy. We're trying to measure that as well, because that, alongside the economic impact, are the 2 big, huge positives for our city and our region whenever big rugby events come to town.
Yeah. Thanks, Mick. You know, and the Rugby World Cup obviously had an impact, or a big impact, in getting young people to enjoy the sport. With COVID, Mick, at the moment, you know, is there a fear that it's going to affect participation going forward? Are you going to lose a generation in the academies?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to lose a generation, but I think there were challenges anyway for both codes of rugby before COVID, and COVID's now just accelerated them. Unfortunately, with rugby, we've pretty much got the worst team sport, probably, if you look at it, for transmission of the virus, because the number of occasions in the game when players come face to face, either in a ruck or a maul or a scrum or a liner, is not great. Let's be pretty honest. Now, hopefully, as we get vaccines and that will minimise, and look, the health benefits of sport far outweigh any potential virus transmission or injury. But the other injury bit that is starting to sort of rear its head is, excuse the pun, is head injuries and concussion. And Lynn, I know that the NFL went through this and they had to pay out $750 million. And I think that's just stage 1, by the way. I think there's more to come. It's starting in rugby now. There's a class action started by about 30 or 40 players that claiming negligence on behalf of international teams and professional club teams, because they are saying they were forced to go back in out onto the field of play when they weren't ready. So these are real challenges for rugby. They've got to address them. But what rugby should have been doing anyway is, we've got lots of variations. We mentioned sevens earlier, but we've got a great variant in touch rugby. For those that don't know what touch rugby is, it's the non-contact version, where instead of a bit like flag football in American football.
Right.
What you've got to do, you've got to diversify your offer, because there will only ever be a small percentage of the population want to participate in full contact rugby. Because you know why? It hurts. It really hurts. And if you play it for too long, you end up with a face like this, and nobody wants this, right? Do they? You know,
right?
That's it. And it could have been more battered. Actually, my nose used to be further over that way, but somebody hit me right in the career and almost straightened it. It still goes a bit that way, but it did me a favour. But the point I make is, it hurts. If you just pursue that, no, we can only play 15 aside. We only want, there used to be all, it's only for men, very outdated sort of thinking that probably came from the 80s and 90s. Get rid of all that. Let's look at how we can get women involved in sport. Let's how we can get the young, but let's how we can look at getting people like me, who I'm 50 years old now. I still play touch rugby every week.
I love it.
It helps my fitness. It's, I play with a bunch of absolute decrepit losers every week. We have the time of our life, John. We are recreating what we used to do on a rugby field 20, 30 years ago when we actually were okay at playing. We're absolutely chronic now, but we have a great laugh. We get a bit of a sweat on and we go and sit in the bar afterwards and have a drink and just recount stories about what we did an hour before, which already bear no resemblance to what went on. But it's a great way of getting us involved. Would we ever play contact rugby again? Not a chance. We're too far gone. So, but diversify your offer. You know, if you just keep plowing on regardless, because this is what we do, you're going to get narrower and narrower and narrower. Open your eyes, see what the opportunities are.
A quick comment. One thing about COVID, everybody playing right now, 20 years from now, they'll tell their kids they would have played pro at the highest level, but COVID took away their opportunity. So that's good about COVID. And let's talk about analytics real quickly. One of the students had raised their hand. But your comment about analytics in the world of rugby, we know about it in every sport, but I don't know as much about it in rugby.
A huge area that is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And not just on the performance, well, in two areas. One on the performance side, you know, everybody's looking for that extra 1% now, that bit of an edge, you know, so the analysis that goes on of GPS data and training data and collisions in matches and stats, and can we not only improve ourselves but spot a weakness in the opposition? That is huge. That is fascinating. You can have almost death by analytics in that. It's a fine balance. The
can
area
I
I believe,
since that was my question, Dr. Lashbrook.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey Mick, I played rugby here in the U.S. in Connecticut for a couple years as a grad student. I went to the hospital at least once a season. Love the game. It would have broken my body down over a couple more years if I kept playing. So I've played soccer for most of my life to spare my body mostly. I work at the NHL, but rugby, even though I'm an American, rugby is my spectator sport of choice. I follow the Super Rugby in the Southern Hemisphere a lot. I'm deeply into analytics. I've edited 6 books on hockey analytics. Now at the NHL, we're starting to do the chip and puck tracking this season for tracking analytics. I'm just interested just on any specifics you have about like what do you do, or what does your league do? What do other teams do that you know about, both analytics that would be non-tracking related and tracking related, and how would you look to have your team use analytics data as far as making decisions?
Good question. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, great question. As I say, it's a growing area. So when I look back at when I first joined the Falcons 20 years ago, we had nobody in this area. Nobody did. It was just down to 2 or 3 old coaches that would watch the game and whatever they remembered got done out. And gradually over the years, now we've probably got a department with 4 people in that we would call analysts that are picking apart every bit of data from matches and training. So, it starts in the week and it's all about, there's the big phrase that means loading, is how much can certain players in certain positions, how much are we expecting them? The days where we ask the entire squad to do all the same are long gone, because not only do you have quite different positions within there, but you've got individuals as well that have different thresholds. And, what we learn all the time is how to get the best out of every individual player. And that is basically giving them, as much as we can, a tailor-made offer to training. There are some things they have to do together as a team, without doubt, but you might pull certain players out a bit earlier. You might ask others to do extra. You might have a greater emphasis on strength and conditioning for some, speed work for others, individual sort of skills as catching and passing for other people in positions. But overall, we're trying to get that right balance so that they arrive at the game prepared but not overworked. Yeah. Then within game, it's how do you use analytics in real time, because you're making real time decisions, aren't you? In game, we have substitutions in rugby, but unlike American football, a lot of American sports, once we take the player off, unless it's a head injury or a blood replacement, they can't go back on. So we have to be sure that when we're pulling that player off and we're putting on, we're improving the team. And There'll be a lot of data coming in on that.
Good.
So look, it's a huge. Where's it going? I think we're moving now to what we don't have in rugby at the minute, but it's been talked about, and it will come out in the next 12 to 18 months. Is chipping ball. Yeah. So we'll start to see how the ball moves within game. You know, how quick passes are, how efficient a kick is. You know, so you combine that then with the GPS data of the players. You've certain cameras as well looking at positioning. What I find fascinating, sorry, I keep coming back to American sports, but what Amazon do with the NFL when, you know, the players go to the end zone and at this point they stop it and say, at this point we've calculated he had a 23.9% chance of getting in the end zone, but here's how he did, and then they run it on, and here's how he did it. I find that fascinating. And I think analytics from games, Timo, is huge because one, it's how does it help the team? You know, and what trends are each team looking at? Because everybody looks at different things, don't they? But the second bit and the most exciting bit for me is perhaps a non-performance side person. I'm more a commercial and an organisation, but it is how can we take that data and make it really, really interesting for either A, the fan in the stadium, or B, the fan sat at home watching the TV with a second or third screen. And
you're right, Mick. That's
you
perfect.
can throw so much data at them, but
and every we learn from every sport. Timo, do you have a follow-up? I got one more follow-up on sports betting. I'll give it back to John. Timo, anything else?
No, it's we're starting to work with Amazon on the NHL side too. So I mean, I think you'll see a lot of the same stuff, and we're dealing with this. You know, I've consulted for teams. I work for the NHL. You know, you got all the different bits of this. How can you make your team better? Pre-scouting another team, in game, and just for broadcast. How do you make broadcast more interesting? It just, you know, you got to use it intelligently no matter what. But it goes into all those areas.
Yeah, and you know, analytics. My observation, all our sports, analytics is creating an opportunity for diversity in the sport. A female that maybe didn't play rugby or didn't play hockey can be part of the organization. You can actually be a CEO. Without playing the game. It used to be your letter jacket was the only way you got in the game. So I'm excited about it. Let's talk real quickly about the revenue streams. We're doing a lot of partnerships in America with sports betting. You've been doing it in Europe for 100 years. The growth of sports betting and rugby, if I may.
Yeah, again, it's probably only just scratched the surface of rugby, and I think it's got a long way to go yet. I think what excites me even more is how do we take that analytics and away from the performance side and put it to the commercial side? You know, what do we understand about our supporters? What are they like? What are the lookalikes? You know, for the first time ever now, we live in an era, don't we, where marketing is properly measurable. Absolutely. You know, in the past it wasn't. We'd put a billboard up, we'd take out an ad in a newspaper. You know, we sort of knew it worked, but we couldn't tell. Now we're sending out, you know, ECRMs. We've got messages on social media. Yeah, there's lots of ways that we can track a person's initial interaction all the way through to do they purchase or do they get involved with us at whatever level. So I think as we grow our data pool and understand more about what is our audience, and again, the globalization, Lynn, our audience used to be people that were within 20 miles of the ground, because the only way that you could have any interaction with Newcastle Falcons 25 years ago was come and watch a game, or you might catch the highlights.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking now, you can be a fan in New Zealand, Australia, Seattle, USA, because you can watch the games. You can hopefully buy an international membership soon. You can see stuff real time on social media. You feel as much a part of it as we can involve you. So how do we make you feel even more? It's not about taking money off people all the time. And I think you've got to be careful on that, because I think particularly with the generation that's coming up, if they feel like they're being overtly sold to, they switch off. Yeah. So you've got to make them feel part of your community. You've got to make them want to interact with you even more. So sports betting is one, but gamification as well is going to be another one. But you can only do that if you've got a really robust sort of data and analytics outlook to what you do. And one thing we're doing at Premiership Rugby, which is incredibly exciting, I've probably learned more on this in the last year than I've contributed. We've got we've just launched a commercial maximization project, which will be based off this single central ticketing system. But it's what we do with that data afterwards and how we take that out on OTT sort of broadcast offer, how we link that to gamification, how we bring in people that traditionally haven't watched rugby. And do you know what? They might still not watch rugby, but their only interaction with us might be that they play the free game. But do you know what? We've got the data. They might be spending towards that. They might buy a jersey while we're there. If that's their only interaction with rugby, then great. That's better than nothing. And we're growing our audience and growing our profile.
Mick, it's very energizing. As I pass the mic back to John, not only do I want to thank you, my global worldwide chat I've been doing for 25 years. I used to get 2 students in, and now we have 30, 40 talking about sport business all over the world. And what's interesting is people learn from every sport, and we cross-pollinate, which is exciting. That's a lifetime membership. And, Mick, we have 20,000 alum from 163 different countries, and John has been a true partner in helping grow around there. We're U.S. based, but we don't want to be just a U.S. company. And you bring that flavor and sincerity. And like I said, I can't wait to get back over and have a few beers in the pub and see all those bruises from playing the touch, if I may. John, I'm going to pass it back to you for kind of a close up. And I know you'll stay around for any questions anybody has. And I'm just want to remind, with Ike and Sharice and Alyssa and Megan and everybody, our staff, we love working and helping people. We're interested in you working in sports. We're not interested in selling courses. We're interested in helping you grow in sports. John, I'll pass it back to you. And Mick, it's been a delight to have you in today.
I'm great. Great to see you again, and thank you.
Thank you very much. John, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Yeah, before we close up this session, I will stay around afterwards to ask any questions you've got about the Rugby Business Management course, Sports Management Worldwide. But we've got a question from Doug. We'll go to Doug first. Doug, your question, please.
Hi there, Mick. Hi, guys. Mick, it was about the relegation promotion, obviously, between the Premiership and the Championship. Is there going to be parameters put in place that all clubs in England then can work to if there is opportunities to go into the Premiership in, say, 5, 6, 10 years' time?
Yeah, there will be. And look, when I say I'm against promotion and relegation, I'm not. I'm against relegation. Yeah. Lots of reasons. I think the drop is too big. I think, for a club like us that's trying to go out and get finance to build a new stand, the first thing the bank will say to you is, yeah, but if you get relegated, you can't afford it. So it just cuts that conversation off. I think we make short-term decisions rather than longer-term decisions. We buy in perhaps a middling international player rather than giving our youth player, our academy player a go. But for me, I'll go back to it. Do the MLS, grow the league, right, as the commercial base will allow. So if a club comes up and it's showing real promise, and that promise might be it brings in a new geographical area for us, or it's got a great stadium and it's got a really big support base, or whatever that reason might be, as long as they prove it on the field as well, then invite them in. And do you know what? Let's grow the Premiership from 12, 14. I'd love a 16, 18 team Premiership in 10 years' time. But only if the teams coming in can, 1, hold their own, and 2, actually add something to the competition.
That makes sense. Aye. Oh, thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks, Doug. Good question. As we've just finished up, Mick, as I said, I will stay on after the session to answer any questions you've got. Be good to get your kind of hopes for the rest of the season, Mick. My hopes are that Gloucester don't remain bottom of the league, but what's your hopes?
Look, on the field, we were very much favourites to finish bottom and be relegated if they were still there, or just finish 12th. If it's not, so I think for us to finish mid-table would be fantastic. Off the field, it's about restarting the business. We want to welcome the fans back, first of all, in a safe way. That's going to be critical going forward, is to demonstrate to your supporters and your potential new fans that you've got a safe environment. Particularly as COVID will have a lingering effect there. But also it's still got to be enjoyable, because the last thing we want is, where we're bringing people in, they're getting shown straight to the seat, watch the game, we're pushing them out of the stadium because of so-called COVID rules. So we've got to get that balance. It's got to be safe, but it's got to be enjoyable. So I'm just looking forward to getting more fans back in. And do you know what? I would love it if before the end of the calendar year, we were able to get back to 100% capacity. And you know what? It's not just be at 100% capacity, but fill the stadium as well. Because as you've got Kingsholm behind you there, John, you love it when that's full just as much as I love Kingston Park when that's got 10,200 people inside it as well.
Yeah, Thanks, Mick. I'm hoping that the games get shortened to 75 minutes. Because Gloucester will seem to lose in the last minute.
You'd probably be top 4, wouldn't you, if that was the case?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Crazy.
Well, John, just look again. I know you're staying on, but if you want to pass my email address out to anybody, if they've got any questions that they think of after the session, which sometimes happens, or they just want to say, look, there's a number of people on the course from even 5-6 years ago I'm still in touch with. I've connected with on LinkedIn. I follow their careers. It's brilliant to see. So it is a community. It is a bit of a family. It's I will always help as much as I can. You know that. And if there are people on here thinking about the next course, look, give it a go. It's about as far away from a textbook as you can get. Yeah. Hopefully it's real life examples of what happens. Some of it's my opinion as well, so don't always take that. Please do challenge me if you come on the course. I'm not always right. In fact, far from it at times. But it's something I really enjoy. I like to give a bit back, and more than anything, I love to see people come into our industry and go on from there and prosper. But that's not the end of the journey. After 8 weeks, we stick with them, and we're always in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. Well, I look forward to doing the next course with you. The course starts on the 8th of March. We do these Zoom sessions every Wednesday, 4 p.m. London time. That's 8 a.m. PST. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. Mick, appreciate your time. I'm going to stay on and answer any questions, and I look forward to seeing you on the 8th of March.
Okay. Thanks, John. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mick. Cheers. Okay, just to if you do have any questions about the course and what we do, please raise your hands. What I'll do now is I'll give a little overview of what is involved in the course. So we do Zoom sessions, like I said, every week. They last for about an hour, and we talk about the topic that week. So we talk about the structure of rugby, that's right from World Rugby right down to the unions and the leagues. Then we analyze how different clubs are structured, both amateur and professional around the world. Then we delve into the kind of different revenue streams. We look at the ticket sales, CRM. We look at the sponsorship side of it. We look at broadcasting, other kind of match day revenues, the food and drink side, the merchandise, off the pitch revenues, broadcasting. We look at match day operations as well, the rugby operations, the academies, Mick's favorite week, which is the community. We touched on it during the session. We feel that the community is a great way to get involved in rugby, and also lead the way to getting involved in professional rugby. A lot of the skills you'll learn in community rugby apply to the professional game. Then we look at social media and communications as well. So we cover an awful lot in the 8 weeks. We've had students take the courses from around the world. A couple of the standout guys, guy called Jack Davis, who actually worked on the marketing side of the Toronto Wolfpack. A great role for him. Unfortunately, that got curtailed because of the pandemic and then pulling out of Super Rugby. But now he's actually a director of rugby with Wales Rugby League. So he's progressed his career nicely. And also another one, Mike Ablett. Mike was, his first role was with Sharks Rugby in South Africa as a marketing manager. And then he's made the step across to the Major League Rugby, where he's chief marketing officer with the Austin Herd. So he's having a really great time over there in a developing league. So there are lots of opportunities, not just in marketing, but in communications, match day operations. So we do cover a lot, and we do try and help students with their pathway. A lot of you have transferable skills, and it's just about how you apply those skills to the sport and show that desire. And doing one of our courses is a great step towards that, to show and to actually show your passion. So the cost of the course, just just to bring that to your attention, is $995 US plus shipping. In euros, that's around 820 euros. And in British pounds, it is 710 British pounds. The exchange rate at the moment is extremely favorable. We also offer economic discounts to students as well from particular countries. If you want any more information on that, please visit our website, www.smww.com, or get in contact with one of our career advisors by making an application. Has anyone got any other questions that you'd like to raise? Feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat bar. Quiet group. Well, like I said, the next course is on March the 8th, and our first Zoom session will be on that following Wednesday. During the course, the way it's structured is that we set you assignments every week. It's not about writing thousands of words. It's about understanding the concepts. It's about being short, sharp, and concise. We also ship you some books as well. The books provide the reading, which lead to something called 2-minute drills. We're also encouraging you to network in the industry. That's quite a big focus of our course. We do information interviews. It's a lot easier being a student to network than it is being a job hunter. So we try and make sure that you utilize those as much as possible. If we don't have any other questions, then I will call it a day now. Thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. I'll pass over to Ike now.
Thanks, John. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you as well to John, Dr. Lashbrook, and Mick, of course, for coming in and spending some time with us. Our next Doc Talk is going to be with Mark Dominic on March 4th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I know that's going to be probably pretty early morning for UK time, but hopefully those that are willing to get up and join us for that, that'll be great. Otherwise, the recording will always become available as will this one. So for those who were not able to join in for this live session, not to worry, we will have the recording out probably tomorrow morning via email, in the same way that you got the welcome email from myself this morning. So with that, again, thank you very much to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your either mornings, afternoons, or evenings, and we'll hopefully catch you all in the next one. Okay.
Cheers, Ike.
All right. Thanks, John.